Okay, we are going to do this absolute beginner's guide to voxels. So the first things you got to get used to is the fact that you have all these tools down at the bottom, and just knowing what they do. And I know there's a lot of people in here who know all this stuff, but I know there's also people in here that don't. So the first tool you get when you come into the game with your pick and all that stuff is going to be your add tool. Your add tool puts down originally this square shape, and you can just straight drop it, and it's just a cube. Actually, let me drop it where you can see it. You can, if you use the scroll bar, you can make it larger. Each click of your scroll bar makes the diameter, increases the diameter, and as you can see, it grows pretty large. There are also other shapes that come with that, and they're on this pull-down menu on your left side. And the pull-down menu is the second block, the cube down here. You click on it, and you get this shape library. The shape library includes the cube, because if you go to one of the other shapes, you will need to hit it again to go back to cube.
I just learned something.
What?
The maximum size for the square is 100 voxels. By 100 voxels. By 100 voxels.
Neat. But these are the different shapes here that are in your drop down, and what they look like in single voxel size up to 5. As I said, they all get larger, so you can just, I'm guessing they probably all go up to 100. Never tried that, but I'm guessing it does. Your circles, because the nature of voxel circles at lower sizes are not smooth. And you can see them playing with making really large spheres.
From your channel.
I'm serious. I never knew what the maximum size for that stuff was. Apparently, I know now.
It's pretty massive.
I didn't know that. I really did not know that.
Yes.
One cool trick I've learned is if you don't have very many materials, especially when you're starting out, if you dig underground and then use the heal tool to build with, it won't cost you any materials.
Okay. Well, let's get to that tool first. Okay, the other tools that we have, the other building tools that you will not get until you place your first claim. When you place your first claim, you will get your delete tool, your selection tool, your paint tool, your smooth tool, your line tool, and as Cody just said, your heal tool. Your heal tool, basically, it heals, it returns the earth to whatever you messed with it. So you can actually build with it if you're underground, because it returns it to looking like dirt. When it isn't exactly dirt, because it's healed earth, and not dirt as in the texture dirt. You can build with it and then paint what you want out of it, and then copy. So say you want to make a circle, so we're going to get the healed, and we're going to hit C, which will turn it into a circle, or you can use your drop down menu to turn it into a circle. And if you want to pull it off the ground, you shift click, and it puts it into what we call tweak mode. Tweak mode allows you to move it around. You bring it up like this. And healed earth voxels are not regular voxels. Well, let me explain one thing. A voxel, what we are calling a voxel, is really a misnomer. I'm not going to go into why it's a misnomer here, because this is very basic. But for this case, we're going to call anything that's a single space shape a voxel here. Single cube shape means that your selection tool at the smallest encompasses the information of one voxel. Okay. Now, with this is healed, so if I paint it, it actually makes it become voxels, where it's not, it is technically voxels, but they don't copyright their healed earth right now.
So there's the three parts of the voxel system, right? There's the voxel location, and then there's the voxel vector, right? And then there's the texture that's associated with that vector.
Right.
So it's actually 4.
Right, because ownership. Okay, so
So this doesn't have that texture data associated with it.
Yes, the healed earth has no texture data. It has shape data, but, well, yeah, it has no texture data, no ownership, but it does have shape. That's all it does have is shape. But the ones that are inside this don't have shape. Only the outside ones have shape, and they're forced to have shape by the air that's around them. I go and paint. Painting just changes the texture of something. I'm just going to go here and I'm going to paint. And because the stuff inside doesn't have shape, if I copy it out, though I can copy it like this, the only thing you're going to see are those ones that I painted. Because they're the only ones that actually have texture. Because the rest of what I have selection is either air voxels here on the outside, which are deleted air, or the healed earth voxels in the center, which also have no texture. And so thus you only get that which has texture when you copy it out. Now you do get the rest of the information. There is other information there, but the only part you see is that which has texture. Okay.
I just copied my painted cross section of this right here, and when I can do a Control V and bring it up, the only thing you'll see here is that painted area, and when I paste it, that's all you're going to get is that painted area. Everything else has no data associated with it, so when you do a copy, it doesn't take that data with it.
Okay, but also what he just did was he only painted it, which means that he only added to voxels that were in the center. Those cube spaces had no information. So they didn't have ownership, they didn't have shape, they didn't have texture. What was the other one? Ownership, shape, texture. Oh, the vectors. No, that's shape. What was the fourth one?
Vector's
Location.
Well, vector is your location. Well, shape and location, I guess, were the two others. Okay. It does have location. So, but when you copy it out, it still does not have, they still don't have shape until he pasted it down. When he pasted it down, then it became the shape, because it had no shape of its own, it actually became the shape of the voxels that were there, which were air voxels. And we can show that again later when we're talking more about, you'll see that more if you hear about putty. That's how putty's made. Let's see, what was I going to do next? Painting, the draw. If you're in a paint tool, actually you can also, I think, do this in the add tool. If you want to pick up a color that you see, but you don't know what the color is, so going through all the textures is going to be kind of hard. What you do is you hold your Alt button. See, right now, my texture says stucco wall. And I want this texture right here. So I'm going to hold my Alt key and then left click on it. And doing that changed it to that texture right there, which was work slate. I can pick up any texture around by doing that. I can do it up here on the flag, hold the Alt down, left click. and it changes it to shiny hammered rubicite, which is what that flag is. That part of the flag is.
Something nifty about the sample option is you can use it on other people's claims even if you don't have permission, just to see what kind of materials that they're using. So if you like someone's material choices, you can easily hold down Alt click and see what they're using.
Yep. Let's see, that is, okay, the delete tool. Okay, and here's another thing is if you make a selection, you can use your tools onto that selection. So you can, if I pull that selection up, let me go back to something else so I don't use up my rubicite doing this. I'm going to go back to stucco. Then you use your add tool on, and then it adds to the whole entire selection. So you're not having to add one at a time all your life. Hey, Warcraft. You're not adding one the whole time. You can add it as a selection. But you can also delete as a selection. If you control Z, you can go back the last step you did. You can copy a selection by doing control C. If you have it on selection. You have to be on the selection tool. You can copy a selection, and you can paste that selection. Okay. I can also use my smooth tool on it. I can take this selection, I can use my smooth tool on it. Now it's not wanting to work again. If you hear that click click noise, it's a bug. And I have no idea why I always get it in here.
That's a recent bug that just started happening.
It's not recent. I have had this bug in this classroom ever since I started.
Usually if you reselect it, it goes away.
Usually I just run around it until I find a side that'll accept it.
Yeah.
But I've had this bug ever since I started this game. It's never stopped. There it goes. Now it's doing it. Here we go. And you have this regular selection, this regular smooth that does a really, really big smooth. Or I'm going to back up a little bit. Or I can do what we call a control smooth, which is like a finer grade smooth, where it's not going to smooth as much at one time. And do this little smooth.
Alright.
Okay? So that's what smooth does. And then you have the line tool, which is a fun little piece. And you have to have to do a line tool to make a diagonal line. I mean, unless you're doing a 1-to-1 ratio where you're doing like straight down on something, you have to have it a 2 voxel. Where it has that 2 voxel size.
Now that we have roaming vectors, I'm wondering why the 1-to-1 hasn't been fixed yet. I wonder if Steve has any update on that.
I still think 1-to-1 is still too hard for the engine to deal with. I mean, you can make a single voxel wide, but to do single voxel wide and single voxel length is really difficult.
One right there. I just used it for that corner.
Yeah, you can do it 1-to-1.
Yeah, but doing it, I mean, to be able to make like a 30-degree angle 1-to-1 or say, anything plus or minus a 45. I mean, we can make 45s. That's easy. But to make a 30-degree or, say, something lower, like maybe a 20-degree, it's not possible. But I almost thought that, with the introduction of Roman vectors, we'd be able to get that. And just because you have overlaying voxels that would take up that space. And I'm wondering why that particular part has not been implemented yet.
Yeah. I don't know.
Now, granted, outside of a one-to-one, the line tool is the single most powerful tool that you have in your arsenal.
Oh, yeah. I mean, being a cleanup person, I use it immeasurably for everything. And you go around and you're cleaning up, problems and things like that where voxels don't want to do what they're supposed to do. I mean, using the line tool is immeasurable for that. Okay, I was going to show you, let's see, drop down shapes, who did that, copy and paste. Oh, templates. You can template something, anything that you want to, by selecting it.
Oh, I'm on the wrong tune for that.
By selecting it, hit your T, and it brings up your templates menu. You'll create new, you take a screenshot of it, and you name it. And then after you name it, it'll allow you to create. And you can take up to 4 pictures of it. Not too sure why. I usually only use one. But if you, oh yeah, I do know why, because they use it for the Player Studio. If you're wanting to show it to other people when you're selling it on Player Studio, you might want to have more than one picture. But I don't do Player Studio, so I only need one picture. And I name it generally because the information that we get does not include size. I usually include the size in my naming description. Because I've gone to places and looked at something and I'm like, well, this template fit here. And I did not know if I didn't put it into my templates, if it would fit there or not.
Also, if it's a very important template, if it's something that's very important to you, name it a number at the very beginning, because it'll put it at the top of your template list.
Oh, I start them with A. If I want them at the top, I start them with A. But yeah, naming them with a number would do better at that. But if you can see here, I not only put what it is, I actually put a subcategory, and then I put the size, and then I put who made it. Because for some reason right now, the creator does not come up on anything. And the only way to know who created it is to use Voxel Vision. And, I have so many templates created by so many different people that, if I'm going to keep up with who they belong to, then I put the name of who made them on there. And also for the fact that not always did the person who created the design was not necessarily the owner of all the voxels. Because if you make something off of someone else's voxel board using somebody else's voxels, it might not come up as yours. It might come up as someone else's. And I have people who come in and make things for me using the shapes that are around here in the room, and it's not going to come up as theirs. And I want to know who made it. I don't care whose voxels they were, because there's voxels from everybody over here. Now, that's Tim's board here. I mean, you make something off of Tim's board. I mean, to me, it's your design, even though it was Tim's voxels. And so I wanted to know whose they are, so I'll make sure I put that on there when I do that. That's templates. I was going to show reactors. Reactors is a way of being able to see what voxels do. Now, there is something called voxel precedence, meaning who dominates when a voxel is put down. And generally, well, in all cases, the last voxel that is placed has dominance, has precedence. So, because of that, you can see what the last voxel does. This is a Voxel Reactor. It's an 8x8, and it's just made by taking your add tool, putting them in a box shape like that with one in between space in between each. You copy that one and paste it 2 up, and you get a reactor. And we call it, I don't even know why we call it a reactor to begin with, but that's what we've called it for as long as I can remember.
I believe it's called a reactor because each piece reacts to the center point. They're all
Yes. Well, yeah, because all of them, yeah, all shapes would react to it because it's, yeah.
Cody actually got something from Draco that actually helps with this, turning all this to glass.
All of
That
what
really
to glass?
helps. If you turn these reactors to glass,
Oh,
you'll see
yeah.
what's going on with the voxel information, especially when you're talking about roaming vectors where it's going to be pushing and pulling in and outside of that typical defined square space that we have there.
Yeah, I probably should have done that with these. Yeah, that would have been nice to have done with these. Okay, and I want to show you that because we're going to take one of these shapes. Now, as I said, these shapes are the shapes that you get from your pull-down menu. And the one on the bottom is the single voxel shape, and that's what you're going to use on the reactor is a single voxel shape. So I'm going to pick up this one. I'm going to do a Control-C, Control-V. And I'm going to make sure I paste it in the center. There are really weird things that happen when you don't remember to assure that you pasted it in the center. And now you can see that the reactor has moved. Let me bring this in so you can see it better. The reactor has moved its parts to adjust to the fact that the one that we put in the center has precedence. It actually, the last one placed actually pulls those other voxels around it.
Yeah, if you take a look at this box that I have here, you'll see what how the glass reacts to it there.
Okay. Now there is something special with that one right there. I wanted to show people something because that leads me to this information right here. Something that looks the same isn't always the same. If you look at these two shapes on top, these two red shapes here, if you look at them on top, they look exactly the same. The one on the left is the one that you get from your pull down menu, and the one on the right was one I created. But if you look at the reactor, you can tell that they are not the same shape. They do not react with the other voxels in the same way. And I actually made it because it did that. Because when I pulled it out and found out that their slope shape did what it does here on this left, and I knew that what I was trying to do to build something was reacting badly to it, I created this one, where the ends attach differently. This is what we call voxelmancy.
Out of these two pieces, which one did you find more useful for building just in general?
Well, because the pull down shape actually has another thing to it that our shapes don't, and I can show that here in a second. I actually like the use of it because, like the line tool, when the line tool changes things in increments, so do these pull down shapes.
And the pull down is on the left menu?
On that left menu. Now as far as after you've pasted it, and the shape on the right's actually a better shape, because if you want that flat part to react to lay flat against another flat part, then you have to use the one on the right, because the one on the left won't do that. It will move the vectors up to halfway when you place it.
Let me demonstrate that right quick. Let me pop this in here like this. Now, if I take the first one, which is the one where the connection points go to the center part of that 45-degree angle, and copy that, and I put it up against this little wall that I pasted here, you'll see that it literally just tears up the wall. But if I take this other one and I copy it and I paste it next to the wall, it doesn't. It retains that 45-degree angle shape. This is a good example of what she's kind of talking about here, and how you can kind of prevent that connection point by the shape of the voxel that you have created.
Yeah. And that's, that would be a reason why adjusting shapes can be necessary. And this is, if you hear about voxelmancy, this is the essence of what voxelmancy is changing a already known shape into something else so that it is more useful for whatever you're doing.
Now, going back to this one that's right here that I'm standing right up against here,
Mm-hmm.
if we flip this around to where that corner that's hitting the bottom corner into the other direction now. So give me a second here to kind of flip this around a little bit.
That should pull it out even more. Oh.
And I'm not doing
No, it
very
doesn't.
good. I'm not very good. Not doing too good with the whole flippity flip flop thing here, but hopefully I can get this thing turned.
Oh,
There we go, got it. And you can see that it has pulled it to the opposing face instead of pulling it down to just that little bottom corner there.
mm-hmm. And that's why how you turn shapes makes a big difference as well. But you can see the difference at, here it is. You can see him showing you the color of what the shape is making. These are different voxels that are being pulled. And they pull in different ways depending on how you have them. Now, people who have heard of offsets but don't know what offsets are voxels that are shifted. And these are, if I use my selection tool, you can see that is the standard. And that's where the information is in that selection. This is a 1/2 offset, and you can see how it sits in the reactor and where the selection actually is. This one is a full offset, and it's a little bit harder to grab. That's where the selection actually sits, and you can see how it's shifted in the reactor. And then you have your 1.5 offset, and selecting it can be a bear. Actually, what I'm going to do is move it.
If you camera down at it and then mouse over to the very top of that, it'll grab it.
Oh, there it goes. Yep. Generally, I can do it from the bottom, but yeah.
Now, the easiest way for me to
There it is.
explain the offsets is you have to break up a voxel into two separate pieces. You have the visual, and then you have the physical. The physical is what you can interact with. It's what you can grab a hold of.
That's the location.
Yeah, it's the actual location of where that voxel is.
Now it's called the cube space for the shape. It's the information, where the information is actually housed is in this cube space.
And then you have the visual, which is what you physically see on the screen as being where that voxel should actually be, but it's not the actual location of the voxel. So you have your physical and your visual location for that voxel, and that's what creates an offset. And these are very useful for being able to do some things that you couldn't do elsewise.
Yes. There are some pretty interesting things that you can do with it, but as this is a beginner class, so probably won't go into that. You can also do what we call micros. Micros are caused by using your smooth tool on single voxel shapes. I'm going to place down my single voxel shape, and I'm going to paint it something other than that so you can see it. I'm going to use my paint tool and paint it pretty purple color. And I'm going to use my smooth tool on it. Now, when you use your smooth tool on it, it changes, it shrinks it down, but it changes what happens not only to that, but to everything around it. I'm going to show you that. I'm going to bring out what I call my checkerboard putty. This is a trick Domino taught me, and anybody else who watched her video of it. You can see there, it has warped all of those voxels around it. And putty works, and as we were saying before, putty works by changing by changing color data and not shape data. Because it had no shape, the voxels inside this heel block have no shape to begin with. When you added color to them, all you added was color to them. And when you copy them out and you paste them down, you are pasting color data onto the air voxels that are there, or any voxels that are within that area. And so it pasted that color data onto all of those voxels, including the purple voxel that we had to begin with. Which is that one right there. I'll repaint it so you can see. But that voxel, being a micro, has pulled in all these other shapes, all these 9 shapes around it. But it's not only those 9, but also the ones on this side and on this side. But if I put those on there, you wouldn't really be able to see them too well. Actually, I can put it on there. Let me show you. Now I'm going to show you this by doing something odd. Now that I did that, I'm going to copy it out so you can see it. That's what it did to those voxels. It did to those. Because when I painted it down, they didn't have information. But after I painted it down, they did have, now they had shape information given to them by the air around and the other voxels around. So once they had information on them, now I could copy out the voxels, these voxels that now have full information, and paste them down, and you can see what happened to those voxels. Just like that. And what happened to this side actually also happened to this side, because, well, the micro voxels are symmetrical. At least when you do them like this, they're symmetrical.
And I would say microvoxels are primarily used for things like railings, window frames. You can use them for like planks and that kind of thing, like in more advanced building. But yeah, primarily I would say window panes and that kind of thing.
Oh shoot, I use them for floors. Or for lattices and walls, or actually wall art. For these, we use the strings for walls, but a string is just, it's done the same kind of way.
To show a better example of that reaction of how a microvoxel actually reacts with the other voxels that are around it, I've created this 2x2 cube. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste a microvoxel into one corner of that cube. Now, it looks like it totally destroyed this thing, and it looks nothing like it did before, but at this point now, I'm going to go in and I'm going to copy each and every one of them and lay them out in their respective locations, so you can actually see what happened to each one of these voxels in that process. So I can drop this down and kind of put this out in a grid kind of sort of way here, so you can actually see what each individual ones of this actually shaped into.
And that's using the closed reactor method, right?
Yes. And hopefully I can get this thing lined up where it's supposed to be.
Needs to go back farther away from you and down. Not that far away from you. There you go. Did they fix that where they're actually where they're supposed to be now?
I honestly, I couldn't tell you. I hope they did.
I think they did because they're looking like they are where they're supposed to be. You're out here. Nope, not that direction because that one you lined up correctly, but it didn't look like it.
Yeah, it looks all kind of funky, but you'll kind of actually see how just by pasting in a microvoxel into a space where of nothing but default or aka prime voxels or default voxels or however you want to call it, you can see how that microvoxel actually works with all the voxels that are around it when you go to paste it down. This happens not only to the voxels that you see, but also to the airspace that is around those voxels as well. And you can use a putty voxel to actually show that portion off of it. But there it is. That's the shaping of all those voxels that have been created by that just pasting in a single voxel or a single microvoxel into that spaced world there.
I'm pasting pasting a putty voxel into it. See what it does now. And because you put them all in there, it's actually made a offset.
Yep, created an offset there. Now, if I take see, she's got it selected there, so you can actually see where the physical location actually resides, and you can see how the that offset is now over here, even though that's the visual, here's the physical, and that's the two relationships in between the offsets.
Yep.
But she basically filled in the center there with a putty voxel, and which is a painted healed earth from the beginning of the show.
Yep, that was the one I got out of his block right here. And all I did was copy out one of the center ones, the ones from the inside that he painted. And I just pasted it right there. There's Cody making boxes with micros.
Yeah, I'm just kind of trying to show, what's possible, the kind of level of detail you can use with the microvoxels.
Yeah, there's so much you can do, and you could come and get any of the boards that I have, and a lot of people else have swaps where you can get their boards, and you can either, ask somebody how the stuff's made, or just, copy it off the board. But this is how you do, generally doing basic shapes. These are just the basics. You start manipulating all of this stuff, and you get the rest of this stuff. All the rest of this stuff around here comes straight from manipulating what we just did.
And almost every bit of this was discovered by players just like you guys.
Yeah. All of us were new people once. All of us knew absolutely nothing at one time, and we all just play with this stuff, or talk to another one of us teachers, or just, ask people, or pulled shapes off walls and just saw what they did. And, you just keep playing with it and talking to each other, sharing what you know. That's what makes us a community. Share what you figure out. So we all can expand this community to make it better. I mean,
you may find something that you might not think is a big change in the world, or you may not think it's very important, but you will be surprised at how the smallest thing can become something a heck of a lot bigger than what you think it is.
Absolutely. This is a new medium. I mean, this is, there was film, there was photography, and now there is, game creation has been opened up to everybody in the same way that film and other, forms or other mediums have been opened up to everybody. And this is, it's brand new for everyone, including the developers. So innovation, this is everyone's opportunity to be that innovator, to find the next big thing. And really, there's so much to discover because every time they add a new twist or a new tool, it completely throws everything on its head.
Yeah. I want to show everybody this piece right here. The lady who made this piece came to my classroom one day just knowing how to put basic blocks down. She came in and I showed her how to make micros, a little bit about, lattice work, and she came up with this. And I was like astounded. And I mean, this is the reason why I teach. To see the fact that somebody with like 2 or 3 days playtime, don't know much, just thrown down basic voxels, can come in and create something like this after having no knowledge of how to deal with micros or strings or any. She had never seen a micro before, and she came up with this in like an hour. And I was like, I keep trying to tell people it does not take a lot of knowledge in this game to make something amazing. Things that amaze those of us who've been here a while.
Well, on that point, on my side of things, come over here and take a look at this. Now, this is something that a gentleman named Hitsu came to me about, and it was something I had never considered, and I might have even done it and just blew it off, and I didn't really think about it at the time. But these are 8 voxels, or this one right here that I'm kind of standing in front of. It's 8 voxels long, right? And the one right next to it is 9 voxels long because I needed that one extra space there. And but what he did was this: he took just those voxels in a row. He took his line tool and increased it to a 3x3, clicked it on one side, and went around to the other side with the line tool and clicked on this side. Now, that doesn't look like much, but I'm going to show you what happens here in a moment. The same setup over here as what we had over here, except we've got one space missing out in between each one. If I click the same locations and come over and do the same thing, we get a different effect. Now, if I take that same thing and pull it over here, let me reduce it back down to 8. I'm going to fill this up, and then I'm going to paint each one with an alternating color of something else here. Let me see if I can find another color here. And let's paint that. And we do that same exact technique here. 3x3, click on this side, go to the other side, and click over here. We get a totally different effect. Now, if I go back to the original here that we first started with, check this out when I go to paint this. I'm going to paint every other one. Look at the shapes that have been formed inside of it. This started off a big revolution on how to make lattice. And it was from just showing this off on one of my streams one day that we had basically an army that took it and ran with it. And some amazing stuff has been created with this ever since. And from this little start, Cody took it and ran it in a different direction. And he actually created his own lattice work. That is, it has nothing to do with this, but it did kick off, that whole mentality of, hey, I want to make my own lattice. And Cody took it and run with it. And he made some